Wasn't sure if this was the one to do it up here. Yeah. Yeah.
He's never seen club, but probably didn't have school. I'm sure he'll just have like a baseball player. Pretty little.
There's not room for them.
Yeah.
Almost there. Ready? Go ahead and call the May 2nd meeting of the Winter Haven Planning Commission to order. Jordan, if you will, please take roll.
David Lane,
Here.
Mario Manigo,
Here.
Elizabeth Davis, here. Jennifer Pasking, Wendy Ventures, Colin Wells,
Here.
Rick Hemingway, Tina Summerlin, here, and Craig Fuller.
Here.
We have a quorum.
You would please stand for the invocation of the flag. Heavenly Father, we thank you for another beautiful day here in Florida. We thank you for the opportunity to serve the city of Winter Haven and her residents. We ask that you be with us here and help guide our decisions, that they may better our city. We ask these things in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Assume everybody got a copy of the minutes. You got a chance to review. We'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I would move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Okay, do a brief explanation of how the hearing is going to go. The case will be read into the record. Staff will provide a presentation and commissioners will be able to ask questions of staff. And once the planning commissioners have had an opportunity to ask questions of staff, we will close the planning commission portion of the hearing and open the public portion of the hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the case, starting with the applicant, may do so. We do ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. Once everybody from the public who wishes to speak has done so, we will close the public hearing and reopen the planning commission hearing. Commissioners will be able to ask any additional questions, or we will entertain a motion and call for a vote. If anybody from the public wishes to speak, thinks you may speak for or against one of the cases we're going to go over this evening, if you would please stand and Jordan will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case shall be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, Jordan. All right, we will move on to new business. The first case is case number P-23-0. 5-S, request by Virginia Diane DeSena for special use approval for a funeral home / mortuary in the commercial downtown C1 zoning district. General location 251 First Street South. The area covered by this request is 0.21 plus or minus acres.
Thank you very much. Chris Young, Senior Planner for the record. Here we have the property attached. It's at the corner of Bates Avenue and First Street South. It's the C1 zoning district. It's surrounded by C1 zoning district to the north, west, and south. Across First Street, we have C3, and behind that layer of C3, we have the mixed-use zoning district. Here's an aerial of the property. We can see the property outlined in red. To the north, we have a medical office. This aerial is a little dated. I do apologize. To the west, we have a parking lot that's not owned by the property owner. That's owned by a separate company. To the south, we have USB Financial Institution, and across the streets, across First Street, we have, Labor Solutions. I apologize. Labor Solutions Temporary Employment Offices. This is looking at the property. The property consists of 2 buildings. Here is the main structure, and then an accessory use structure to the rear of the property. You're looking at it kind of at the corner of Bates and First Street, so it's kind of angled, but that's the property as it is today. This is looking south. Here's the USB Financial Institution. This is looking west into the interior of the neighborhood. It's a mix of multifamily with 20 on Second into the rear. We have single family residents as well as some commercial units that have been converted from the single family residence. And across the street, an updated photo, we have the clinical care medical facility and Labor Solutions across First Street to the east. Some background. This is a request for special use approval to operate a funeral home / mortuary in the commercial down 1C1 zoning district for the property as previously mentioned at 251 First Street South. The property contains 2 buildings totaling 1,668 square feet. The primary structure was constructed in 1925, and the secondary accessory structure was constructed in 1964, as well as associated parking on site. The leasee proposes to use the building for funeral home mortuary uses and with approximately 2 employees. Provided on-site services include storage, preparation, and transportation of human remains. On-site parking will be provided by an existing on-site parking lot containing up to 11 parking spaces with access from First Street South and Bates Avenue. And the anticipated hours of operation will be Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The leasee at this time has indicated no public funerary or memorial services will occur on site. The following conclusions have been reached. Based on the size of the building, the number of employees, and the lack of on-site memorial services, this use functions more as a typical office use than a traditional funeral home. As an office use, the petitioner's request is consistent with the mixed-use character of the surrounding area. And the projected low volume of peak hour vehicle trips and minimal impacts to the surrounding neighborhood are expected as a result of the funerary home mortuary facility operations. Staff recommends the following, recommends the Planning Commission approve this request subject to the following conditions. Delivery of deceased individuals shall be limited to the rear of the property, and appropriate screening shall be utilized to make delivery as discreet as possible. A 6-foot tall opaque fence shall be installed along the southern and western property lines. A site plan shall be submitted for review and approved prior to commencement of operations at this location. And no on-site funeral or memorial services shall be permitted. And I'll stand for any questions. I would like to say, thank you. I would like to say one point of clarification. We've heard from the public regarding crematory services at this location. This is not a crematory. Crematory services or just disposal of the body in crematory fashion is not allowed at this location. It's merely handling of the ashes. So I just want to make that clear. This is not a crematorium and it would not be allowed at this location. Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions.
Yep.
You know, in reviewing the fact sheet and then the agenda that came out. So no funeral services or memorial services will take place. There's no on-site. What do we mean by preparation of
So
the deceased?
So embalming services, prep for open caskets, dressing of the body. There are coolers on the body, so bodies, human remains can be located on site. Basically, it's just everything, and I'll let the applicant speak to the details of it.
Sure.
But body preparation for burial or cremation or funeral services offsite.
And I assume that those kind of services require like a state license.
Yes.
To do so, and they have to follow certain guidelines as far as storage of
Correct.
bodies, chemical disposal and storage, that kind of stuff.
Correct, that it is, biohazardous waste, so they have to contract with the appropriate disposal companies. Inspections via state and local regulatory agencies. Yes, those are all requirements. Yes,
Is this a new business in town, or is it being relocated here from some other location?
I will let the applicant speak to if they've had another business. This, as far as we're concerned, this is a new business at this location. Yes, sir.
I have a few questions.
Yes.
What are we defining as funeral memorial services? What we have the recommendation is the condition of no funeral memorial services on site. What are we?
Sure,
defining?
so what we consider funeral or funerary memorial services, gatherings, wakes, the property is just too small in terms of parking. At this point, it would, any type of public memorial ceremony, where friends, family gather, that you consider it like a church function. Yeah. It's mostly just the preparation, transportation.
We are allowing family members to come.
If they were to.
Before taken off.
To
to a
collect,
ceremony.
cremated remains, something along those lines, in an urn, prepared remains.
Can you go back to the aerial photo of the
Sure.
site there?
Yeah, I know. First of all.
This one or?
The overhead. So when you say that, on the conditions about bringing bodies in through the rear of the
Yeah.
facility. I mean, I've driven past this multiple times and I know there was a real estate office there before, so I've been on site, but I know there's like some trees and like a grass section. So there's not any parking at the rear of the building.
So let me
Okay.
switch, if you don't mind,
Yeah, go ahead.
help kind of explain it. So from our understanding, body delivery and preparation will happen in this building here
Okay,
in the secondary offsite. Much like the hearse is currently backed into it.
Okay.
That's where we're assuming at this point, and our understanding is that's where the applicant will deliver remains. So it is to the rear, it's just kind of off Bates Avenue.
gotcha.
So it's not to the front, anything like
On
that.
the backside of the other building.
Correct.
Okay,
And they would have to provide some type of appropriate screening at that time. So whenever delivery occurs, whether it's draw curtains or something more permanent, they would have to put something so it can't be viewed from First Street.
thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, well, why are we requesting a fence?
The fence is along yep, sorry.
I'll just be candid.
Yeah.
I'm the neighbor on the other side of the empty lot.
Yep.
I don't
So,
care.
yeah, so the fence is along the western property line and the
Mhm.
southern property line. Those two are just to kind of make some separation from the businesses to the south. As well as if this property parking lot is ever developed in the future, or if there are people parking there. It's just to provide some kind of blockage
Okay,
and separation.
any other questions from commissioners? Comments? No? Okay, we will go ahead and close the planning commission portion of the meeting and open the public portion of the meeting. If the applicant is here,
Permission to approach, if that's okay?
Sure. And then if you would, when you go back, you'd state your name and your address for the record as well.
Thank you.
And what's it that?
I'm gonna have a little fun.
Thanks.
Yeah, that'd be great for one of the.
Are you guys going to start the timer? I'm going to make it quick. Shouldn't be long. So for the record, my name is James Miller. I'm the president owner of Lighthouse Memorials. Our official business name is Roland Services, doing business as Lighthouse Memorials. I wanted to make sure this commission completely understood what's going on the property. So you all have the information that we just discussed, so I won't go over that. But I do want to note that we've done a lot of renovations to make this property suitable. And to be honest, I had no idea that I'd have to need a special use because Chris Kuhn Funeral Home actually operated on the north adjacent lot for over 70 years without any issue with the city or the state. So, and I do have experience in this. I was a funeral director for a very long time. I'm actually fourth generation, and we definitely lean ourselves on dignity, honor, and respect for the decedents. I do want to go over each building for you just to give better context, and I have some photos for this commission. So if you go to page 2, building 1 is that building we just discussed. It's 1152. It actually has 36 people can sit in it. You'll find in the attached addendum the fire report that is actually from the fire inspection that we had. So it can sit 36 people. So that's exhibit A for you, but I think the planner already called it out, but it faces north to Bates Avenue and then west to that lot. We do intend to use that as a arrangement room and small chapel for viewings. When I spoke to the planner, it was, I said there would be viewings, so I was a little shocked when I saw the approval based on no type of arrangements. Again, very small viewings, not actual for large gatherings. We do have kind of contracts with churches that we've met, and most people actually go to churches or religious event spaces for actual funerals. But we do not intend to do any large gatherings or large assemblies, not within, less than, and hopefully that 36 required by the county, or at least that fire inspection report. But that picture hopefully gives you a better understanding of how small the chapel is, why we do not intend to have large gatherings here, and why we do intend to just have small private gatherings for families that maybe want to have a viewing before their loved one is cremated or buried. If you want to go to building 2, which is the next page. As the planner mentioned, this is actually the building that we will receive a loved one into our care. And I tried to take as many photos around the building so you get a full scope of kind of what's there. But our intended use for this is for the ID storage, refrigeration, embalming, dressing, casting, and cosmetics of an individual's loved one. We have a lot of regulation required by the state. So Florida State Statute 497 actually regulates our business. We are licensed by the state of Florida as a funeral establishment, which you will have a copy of that license in your package as well. So the state of Florida has actually already been out to our facility and approved it. But some of the conditions or concerns you all have, I want to tell you what 497 requires of funeral establishments, because funeral homes are not nuisances, but we are a little bit taboo. So I understand this commission's concern. But for example, we need to have clearly marked signs that formaldehyde is in this area and that is cancerous. It's signs that clearly state that this is private property, only authorized individuals can join. And there actually is already a partition there. If anyone here or the actual planner had gone on property and under the carport, you'd see that it's nicely hidden. And I have a wonderful way of showing you all what that looks like a little bit later. But these are some of the things required by Florida State Statute 497. On that next page, I just want to call out all the licenses that we do have. As I mentioned, the state of Florida has actually already done their inspection. We are funeral establishment 466-7717. That inspection report is available for you all to read and ask any questions while I am here, and if you want to look at it later. We also already have our Florida Department of Health bio waste permit as well. That is in there along with the inspection at the end. As I mentioned to the planner, it's just me and my dad. We're just a small family-owned business. I'll be lucky if we get individuals come to our funeral home because death is so personal and you want to go to people you already know. But we are super excited to have this business. I did put 497 here because I want you all to understand what's required by the state as far as the removal process of a decedent. First, they have to be inside of a body bag or wrapped in sheets. They also should be covered as well while on the stretcher or gurney, which I do have a picture of that to show you what that looks like. It also has to be discreet as possible, and a partition is required by the state. So there's nothing that this commission would be asking of me that the state of Florida doesn't already require in order for me and my father to keep our licensure as an establishment and as funeral director and embalmers. On the following page, I just want to show you what that removal process looks like. I know the planner so graciously explained it for you all, but I think it's better to see it in total. So we back up one of our vehicles. So we have a removal van. And there is a partition there. So as you can see, you back up into that carport. The driver or myself or my father would get out. We would then go to that partition. It actually rolls all the way down. There's actually a weighted bar at the bottom of that. So that ensures that it stays there, and that would be protecting Bates Avenue. The car itself would be protecting, First Avenue. And the car itself would be protecting Bates Avenue. You then remove the decedent, who, like I mentioned, is already in a body bag and or covered in sheets, as well as covered by a black partition. And then they are placed into the room that we do use, which is that second accessory building. I did show some photos in building 2 of kind of what that room looks like, just in case anyone was ever curious about it. But that's what the removal process looks like. And I want to close really quickly because I feel like I'm going too long and jattering. But your key takeaway here is really that a funeral home is not a nuisance. We are an essential business. During the pandemic, we were at the front line of, ensuring that everyone had dignity, respect, and honor. This can be improved in C1, and we are super heavily regulated. Again, Chapter 497, Chapter 69K. There's the Federal Trade Commission that also regulates us. And there's another big board that I'm way more scared of that can take my license and fine me a lot of money and send me to jail, which is something I would never want to happen. So just want to make sure you all know that. As I mentioned earlier, Chris Kuhn Funeral Home operated very well on the north adjacent lot for a very long time without any issue. Before I even started this, I've been there for 4 months. I actually spoke to most of my neighbors. I actually had no idea one of my neighbors was on this commission and didn't know I had to come to this commission. So I apologize to her publicly. But most of them were also small business owners and very much approved and remember Chris Kuhn and the Kuhn family and all the work they did in the funeral home industry. I do want to note for this commission, because I was a little startled on Friday. As I was cleaning, a code enforcement person stopped by and I was a little shocked because I was like, wait, what's going on? And they had a complaint, but again, the complaint was unfounded because we are not open. We are not operating as a funeral home, although we just got our license and had all of our inspections on Tuesday. So the license came, which is in that package on Tuesday, the 25th. And you'll find in whatever that inspection report comes from that code inspector that they found absolutely nothing. They actually saw our stretcher still in plastic. They saw our freezer unplugged with plastic over it. They even came into our main facility and saw what we were doing. So these photos were actually taken on Sunday to be prepared for this meeting. So I apologize for that long rant, but I want to make sure that you all have all the details. And as I mentioned, all the inspection reports, all the permits, all the approvals from the state of Florida, as well as Department of Health is in the backup exhibits.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak or against?
My name is Conley Thornhill. I own the building to the south. I don't know if you're from this area, but we welcome business coming to Winter Haven. So I want to be a good neighbor. Can you put up the picture earlier, Chris, about that showed the picture of the building? My biggest concern is there's, by my count, 6 or 7 parking spots on this property, and there's been no less than 6 or 7 vehicles, including Ford Hurst, parked on this property for at least the last 3 or 4 weeks, which is a code violation. If you put up the picture right now, you'll see there's a code violation with 3 different Hurst parked to the northern part of the building. So my concern is where are you going to have the additional parking? And now, I understand you, the building will hold 36 people. So my concern is I don't think this building is large enough to house all the vehicles unless they're going to be parked off-site. And if we aren't going to be in code violation, is the owner of the property going to put in additional paved parking? My other concern I have is, we do have hurricanes from time to time here in Florida. So is a generator going to be required in case the refrigeration goes out due to, unforeseen circumstances? So again, my biggest concern is these vehicles have been parked in the back of this property for weeks now. Also, I understand the property directly to the west is going to eventually be townhomes or housing of some sort. So I'm not sure it's compatible. So again, I have some concerns about, are we going to have continual code violations? None of us have time to be continually pestering the city about code violations. And again, maybe you have parking offsite or other property that you can do that. But again, I don't think having 36 people and then 7 or 8 different vehicles is going to be appropriate for a building that has only 6 or 7 parked spots. The last thing, the fence, if the building or the bodies are going to be delivered to this property that's to the north, I'm not sure a fence along the southern and western border makes sense. How is that fence going to be maintained? I mean, it's called to be an opaque fence. That's a pretty broad term. So I'd like the planning commission to request that, a design be approved that fits in along with the other buildings along the way. Let's see here. That's really it. Again, we welcome business to Winter Haven. We're pro-business and pro-growth. It's great. It's just, again, ever since the remodel is taken care of, there's been a large number of vehicles parked on the grass in the rear of the building, which has generated some concern amongst a number of neighbors. So anyway, thank you very much. What I would finish with is I request the planning commission continue to study this and not approve it tonight. I think there's been enough concern voiced from neighbors that we need some additional clarification on some of the things that have been requested, such as the fence, and also how are we going to address the parking issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Sharon Trudeau. I'm the practice administrator with Polk Therapy, Physical Therapy, Comprehensive Outpatient Rehab. We are leased from Conley Thornhill with UBS in his building for over 13 years. So we're privately owned, just like the owners of this new business. Excuse me while I read my notes. I'm nervous. So I do appreciate the opportunity for this formal setting. We too were at the front line of treating patients for their rehabilitation during COVID. Didn't miss a day because patients need their rehab. We've addressed my initial concerns regarding the terminology cremation services or crematory that's on the sign. It was because on both sides it says crematory. So obviously we are concerned about burning or chemical use in cremation services. I don't know enough about how it's vented, but major concerns about that. Those have been addressed already, and there are no cremation services allowed there. So, okay, sorry. So the crematory services and its implications to the environment so close in proximity to our business was our concern. Chris Kuhn did have an expansive property much larger than what this current facility would have. They housed hearses in their garage, and they had privacy when they transferred the patient into the funeral home, and they did hold funeral services. My big concerns were the hearses that were parked. It would be hard to show you on the other side of that building, within 100 feet of the entrance of our building, 3 hearses and then funeral car parked on the grassy area. Those have been moved to the picture that you see up there now in the new grassy area. So it was just, we had lots and lots and lots of questions from our patients. We're wellness. And so they wanted to know, why a crematory? what's going to happen. Is it going to have ashes? And our employees wanted to know, are there going to be ashes around our car? Is it going to smell? Biohazard waste, I would like to know where that's going to be stored. The biohazard waste, is it outside? Formaldehyde being carcinogenic, I'm concerned. Our business is within 100 feet of there, our employee entrance. So my biohazard waste, and then, of course, I hate to say it, but the smell of the biohazard. Personally, I used to work for the Chamber of Commerce. I've been real involved with small business, very centered on our city, and have been like the expo, attend all the expos, and we talk about walkable city all the time. We want to make Winter Haven a walkable city. Although I know that this is a C1 code, as we were told, and they have the ability to have this type of business there. I just don't think it aligns with the city's strategic planning, and along with Main Street Winter Haven, the Chamber of Commerce. You know, we talk about connecting the downtown. As a business, we went out of our way to be thoughtful of the construction that has taken place, I think, for over a year. You know, rerouting our patients and rerouting the UBS customers, because we were so excited about the fact that we were going to have this really cool city. And I just don't think this business aligns with it. And that is probably a moot point because of the coding, but I felt like I really wanted to say it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else from the public that wants to speak for or against?
Good evening. My name is Diane DeZena, and I am a longtime resident of Polk County. I lived in Winter Haven for 35 years. I have owned businesses in several in
Excuse
Winter
me.
Haven, Auburn.
Hi, can I swear you in before you speak?
I'm sorry?
Can I swear you in before you speak?
Yes,
Okay, can you just raise your hand for me?
yes,
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this case shall be the truth?
it's true. Thank you.
And can you actually state your address as well, please?
My address currently is 4078 Windchime Lane, Lakeland, Florida. But I lived in 3 residences in Winter Haven before that. I own currently at the age of 81, I still own businesses in Winter Haven, Lakeland, Auburndale, and Bartow. I believe in free enterprise. I'm an entrepreneur. I reserve courtesy when I open my businesses. I know that small business is the key to our economy. I have every faith in my tenant. He has followed every dictate that I have asked him to do. He has improved the property. His heart and soul is in this. So I would like you to rule in favor of him. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Heather, can we bring the applicant back up to address some of these concerns? Go ahead.
Thank you. So something I did not mention that is in that packet is all of the contractors we have. So I hear the public, we will not be doing cremations on site. There is a contract in there showing that we actually do all of our storage, refrigeration, and contract cremation services in Tampa, Florida. So there's a packet there showing that all those things will be there. So there's no worry about a generator or any backup. That room will actually be used very seldomly, only when we absolutely need to bring someone into our care 9 times out of 10 at 2 a.m. in the morning, because death doesn't wait for anyone. So I want to be clear of that. Secondly, as far as parking, the cars have been there for about 2 weeks or so. And I agree with that. I actually recently acquired 3 of them, but we do have parking externally about 3 blocks away at TMS Haven. I have not gotten that contract because when I saw the concerns of the board, I said, hey, I don't want to sign any more contracts if I'm not going to be able to have a business. But the individual at TMS Haven, which is across the street from First Avenue on C3, 3 blocks over, has given us the ability to park our hearses and cars there. That would be where our parking would be, assuming this was approved. We also are open to, other arrangements, but whatever this board sees fit, we're willing to do. But I try to give as many contracts to show you that we are partnering with local businesses and that while this will mostly operate as an office, we will have some funeral activities on site.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? All right, seeing as we have none, we will close the public portion of the hearing and reopen the planning commission portion of the hearing. I do have, Chris, I've got an additional question. It sounds like we have a conflict between what's being presented and what the intended use is. And like the stipulations that we put on it for funeral services, I mean, if that's the intended use of it, are we putting that on this because of lack of parking?
Yeah, so I have a suggestion. Yeah, our concern was parking and the ability to adequately, park the guests who are coming for the services. I would suggest a modified condition if you are inclined to approve the special use. I would modify that condition that when they submit for site plan approval, that they also show us a shared parking agreement that they have with an external property that would adequately park their service vehicles.
Is something, 3 blocks? Is there adequate crosswalks
Yeah, I think
between?
in the applicant, yeah, and we can ask the applicant, but I think the idea is that they would park their excess vehicles, their hearses, on the exterior lot to allow the patrons of the service to be able to have adequate parking on site. I think you said the maximum was 30, 35, 36, 36. If there's only 6 parking spaces, I do see a grassed area there. When they submit for their site plan approval, they may be able to add some additional legal parking on the site. So we'll evaluate that at site plan approval. So I would suggest modifying that recommendation to show that when they submit for site plan approval, that they also submit a shared parking agreement with an appropriate, neighboring partner.
Is street parking allowed along Bates?
I don't think there's any in that area of Bates. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no on-street parking that's been created. I don't think it's prohibited, but there's really no right of way to create it. So
I think some of the neighbors' concerns, maybe it would be a concern of mine that because there are readily available parking lots close by for other property owners, that they may be used without permission, or just, hey, I can pull in here, there's a parking spot and I can just walk across, the grass or something like that. I mean, do we have any? I don't think there's much we can do about that, right? But
If they're parking on neighbor's property
Yeah.
without permission. Yeah, and ultimately that's a, private property issue that they could, the private property owner could, call the police and ask them to be signed.
Yeah, I've mentioned, I met my neighbor. We knew that there had been a funeral home walkover.
Yeah.
We didn't think about this at the time. I can speak for the neighbors on Bates, the accountant's office, the catering business, my law office. We don't have a problem with this. We don't have a problem. We don't see a need for a fence either. Just in looking at this, in that the way it's situated, the remains coming in and out will be blocked from our view anyway, but we don't see the need to erect a fence. The double lot that's currently a parking lot probably has been for a good 20 years. It's sold in the last, I think, 60 to 90 days. So I don't know what the plans are right now, but I'm the one that gets a good look from my office and conference room into this building, and we can't see anything. So we don't have a problem with it. So. Before we entertain a motion, I mean, staff's recommendation
is to not allow funeral services. So we're kind of at odds there.
Well, yeah, so I would suggest we modify that
Okay.
condition to allow for, and actually, we were just looking at the parking generation in our code for religious establishment, which is really what a service would be.
Okay.
And it's 0.3 parking spaces per seat. So 36 seats would require 11 parking spaces. Which if they paved those three, that grassy area with 3 spaces, they're at 11, I believe. So in theory, they could make that work out.
I will defer to the applicant. I'm trying to look on the picture. It doesn't look like you have 36 chairs.
I apologize for just setting. We actually only have 25 chairs.
That's about what I counted.
And if you count the 4 in my arrangement room, but I only gave 36 because that's what the fire inspector said. We do not, again, I do not intend by small viewing, I mean, again, when you lose your loved one and you're going to cremation and they're not going to stay, you may want to have you and 10 members of your family say goodbye. You may have someone come in, see a body, leave. Never at any time do I expect to have 36 people in there. I'm a big boy myself and I wouldn't want to be in there with 36 people. So I do want this commission to know that at no time do I ever expect 36 people to be on site. I was just saying that's what the fire code individual said. The seats there, you can count them on the photo, is less than 26. I want to say it's 24. To be exact, they're 4, 8, 12, 6, no, 20. It's like 23. It's not actually more than that because when I ordered it, I didn't even order 36 chairs.
So at 25 chairs, let's round up a little bit to 25 chairs times 0.3 is 7.5. So we'd round that up to 8 spaces. That would be 8 spaces. I would suggest a condition that says at site plan approval, they indicate how many seats they intend to have for services and provide and have the ability to provide that many parking spaces for a religious establishment on site. And if it exceeds that, then they have to show a shared use, shared parking agreement with somebody offsite.
Following what is in section or in chapter 21, as far as distance by ordinary pedestrian, as we normally would for shared parking agreements. I just want to make sure we're within the same distances that we normally.
And I know we just said a lot. Maybe you can craft a condition real quick that reiterates what we just said.
I have a question for the establishment. So for the bio waste part of this, I'm seeing that it says that it's a monthly collection, but this is only for medical waste, but not human remains, correct?
Yes, so we never, so I want to use correct legal as well as medical and mortuary science terminology. So cadaver would be what we call the actual body of someone for scientific purposes that would be collected. Those go to anatomical guides. So there's University of Florida and big state, universities, they take those bodies. We would never be collecting them by bio waste. What bio waste is that when you do the embalming process, sometimes individuals have bandages, they have pacemakers, or they may be in those sheets that I just discussed. When they have biomatter on them, they cannot just be thrown away, as I'm sure all of my neighbors that are in the medical community know. So that is required to be kept indoors and covered at all times with a sticker on it, and it has to be collected by the Department of Health or one of their generators. So that is what that inspection report is, saying that we are a generator, we have the approval of the state of Florida as well as Department of Health to operate with bio waste. We have done the appropriate training. We have the appropriate things on site, and that is all indoors. That is not external. You will never smell anything from bio waste. You will never see anything the same way I don't smell anything from any of my neighbors that happen to operate medical clinics or the hospital, for example. All of those things are required to be indoors at all time. So the bio waste that is discussed on that permit is being picked up monthly by an authorized company sponsored by or approved by the Department of Health. We have it monthly now because we do not expect to get a lot of business or to have that much bio waste that we would need to discard it weekly or bi-weekly or anything like that. If ever my business got there, I promise I wouldn't be at this location. But for, operating 4 or 5 or 10 bodies, a month or, monthly bio waste collection isn't a problem by any means.
So, so this is kind of the beauty of our code right now is that this is a special use, so it allows us to have this discussion so we all understand exactly what's going on. Heather has crafted a proposed condition that would replace the one that says they cannot have on-site services. So I'd like her to read that and see what you guys think of that.
Yeah, so to replace condition 4, it would say on-site services or on-site funeral / memorial services shall be permitted, but seating shall be limited to the number of parking spaces provided on-site or through a shared parking agreement as permitted in chapter 21, using a parking ratio of 0.3 spaces per seat.
Commissioners have any additional questions for staff or? Question for clarification. Does that mean that the owner will have to put a couple more parking spots? Unfortunately, we've already closed the public hearing portion of it. Yeah, but Eric did bring that up though. So where do we leave?
Yeah, so it would not, the way that condition reads now, they would have to identify exactly how many
How
seats,
many actual spots?
which would dictate how many
spots.
spaces they would have to either
And if
construct
they
or,
continue to grow and require more seats, they would
Correct.
require more parking or a
Correct.
shared parking agreement.
Correct.
And that's all handled in the site plan. So the site plan approval will dictate and it'll list how many seats and then it'll have to meet this condition for the special uses.
And then just kind of jumping ahead as I reflect and then maybe for the benefit of them along with everybody else is if you decide to redo your site, I believe you have to design your stormwater systems as opposed to just the individual impacts, which means it may not fit.
so this site is within the C1 zoning district, which is exempt from our local
Okay.
stormwater ordinance. However, it is adjacent to First Street. Is First Street in this area of the city? It's not DOT. Okay,
It's not the
so
DOT.
it's not DOT section, so,
That's why I'm asking. It's
So-
really close.
yeah,
So,
so-
Central's where
okay,
so
that's
we're-
where it changes.
Yes.
Okay.
But
All
they
right.
would have to do all, proper permitting and everything that would need to go and that'll happen through the site.
So it may be more challenging for them to acquire the number of spaces that they want for the max. They may have to limit it to the max of what's actually there.
Correct.
So I'm just clearly indicating. Okay.
Any additional questions? And a motion?
I'd like to motion in favor of case number P-23-05-S, a request by Virginia Diane Becerra for a special use approval for a funeral home mortuary in the commercial downtown C1 zoning district. The general location being 251 First Street South, area covered by the request is 0.21 more or less acres with recommendation, condition number 4 modified as presented by staff.
Second.
We've got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to the next case, case number P-23-06-S, request by 610 LLC for special use approval for a large-scale drinking establishment, package sales and small-scale artisan production in the commercial downtown C1 zoning district, general location 302 4th Street Southwest. The area covered by this request is 0.87 plus or minus acres.
All right, Heather Whiter, senior planner for the record. This is a zoning map. As you can see, the subject property there is hatched. It is zone C1, as are the adjacent properties to the east and south. And then to the north and the west across the FDOT pond for 17 is some C4 in this area. This is the aerial map. This is a project that's currently under redevelopment. But as you can see, there are 3 buildings on the site, and I'll go in more detail about those. To the south across Avenue D Southwest is an office building with parking. To the east is auto sales as well as a dance studio and parking for a restaurant. To the north is a mixture of commercial and office units within them. And again, to the west is the FDOT pond. As you look at a view of the subject property, I'm standing over on Fifth Street, so look across the pond so you can see the expanse of the property. That is what is subject to this request. As you look to the south along Fourth Street, again, the next is some parking, and then down at the corner is a private Montessori school. As you look across to the west, there's a mixture of buildings with vacant commercial or commercial uses located within them. And to the northwest, there is some storage facilities and auto repair uses. And as you look to the north, again, a mixture of some office uses and a retail store. And to the east is along Avenue C, and there is a dance studio and then a Haven restaurant at the corner. Again, this is a request for special use approval for a large-scale drinking establishment, package sales, and the small-scale artisan production located in the C1 zoning district. Property is generally located at 302 4th Street Southwest and consists of a project called Bowen Yard. Soci Market currently offers on-site alcohol consumption as part of their restaurant use, but proposes to add package sales to their business. Future vendors within Bowen Yard will utilize the expanse of the parcel with outdoor areas where on-site alcohol consumption is envisioned. So that's the purpose of the special use approval. And some of those vendors may be small-scale artisan makers as defined in our code, and which would require also special use approval. So this will cover, there's the word I'll look for, will cover everything that is a plan for the site. They do meet the separation from a church, and then the separation from a school was granted through a variance by our development special magistrate. Bowen Yard project includes 3 buildings. One is a 3,910 square foot block building that's currently used for Soci Market and Destroyer Media and Marketing's office. There is a 3,767 square foot building currently being reconstructed to a full service sit down restaurant with full bar and outdoor patio. And there is a 3,030 square foot building to be reconstructed into 4 spaces to be leased to a mixture of food vendors, small scale artisan producers, and other retailers. Security plan was submitted and approved by the chief of police for the alcohol portion of this. No on-site parking is required because it is in C1, but adequate parking is available in the downtown corridor, and they are also creating 24 public on-street parking spaces as part of this redevelopment. In conclusion, the location of Bowen Yard in the city's downtown is consistent with long-term goals to grow the social, cultural, and business core of the city. Minimum off-site impacts are expected as a result of this request. Staff does recommend the Planning Commission approve this request. This is aerial, and I forgot to put the floor plan in there. It is in your your agenda packet, and I apologize for not inserting that. It kind of shows the layout. I stand for any questions.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Would you define large scale, drinking?
Certainly. So by our code, a large scale drinking establishment is anything that's permitted for more than 29 persons by the fire marshal. So that is most on-site drinking establishments. And to be exempt from that, you would have to meet our definition of a bona fide restaurant. And so while it is food services on the site that will be providing the alcohol, the outdoor patio area, being able to move around within the city and there maybe lawn games and stuff does not meet our definition of a restaurant, and therefore special use approval is required as a drinking establishment.
One more question. What will the hours be? Will they extend into 1:30 a.m.?
I will defer to the applicant as she is here, but the alcohol sales within the city are allowed to 2 a.m. Monday through Saturday and to midnight on Sunday. So they would be in the provisions to operate to that. I do not know if that is the intent of that, though.
Thank you.
I understand that C1, there's no requirement for parking. There isn't a whole lot of parking on that side of town at all. So with the 24 sites, will they be able to park around Fifth Street? Where do you see overflow going? And I know 610 owns the building directly to the south as well, so.
Yeah, so I'll let the applicant defer as to whether they intend to, allow for shared parking within some of their adjacent spaces. But as with other sites in the south part of downtown, the city is looking at ways to provide additional parking in this area. With the complete street project of Avenue C Southwest, there's the dedicated on-street parking that has been installed. And honestly, it is a short walk down Third Street to all the parking that's around Magnolia Park. And so as people come to downtown, it's never a matter of parking in the area, it's a convenience issue. And so if this is as cool of a concept as everyone is talking that it will be, people will walk to it. It's no different than Armature Works in Tampa. You'll walk the River Walk to get to it if you can't find parking near it.
And I would only add that as part of this project, they are dedicating some property and have already entered into an agreement with the CRA board to provide 24, they're going to construct 24 on-street parking spaces as well as the sidewalks. And the CRA district is going to reimburse them for the cost of those on-street parking spaces. They will be public and open to anybody to use at any time. And that's actually one of the strategies that was identified in the Walker parking study that we had done about a year ago or so, is that when projects like this one, redevelopment projects happen within the downtown core, that we try to enter into these types of partnerships to provide more public parking.
Excellent.
If you look on the site plan within your agenda packet that again apologize, is in a slide, it shows the proposed spaces.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
the proposed spaces. Thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions? No? Okay, we'll close the planning commission portion of the hearing and open the public portion. Does anybody from the public or the applicant wish to speak?
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name's Beth Evans. I'm with 610, the applicant. Our street address is 56 4th Street Northwest. And I just want to, first of all, thank the staff for helping me with this application package. It's a lot of regulations to understand, and she helped me put together a great plan for this. And they did a great review, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have in addition to the parking and the hours, if you have anything else. Want me to start with the hours? Commissioner
Question about
Lane?
the hours, Operation.
Yes, the hours,
Yes, sir.
in the evening.
Yes, sir. We really don't have specific uses for lease in this space yet, so we don't know the exact hours that we would propose to be open here, but we certainly, would stay within the regulations of the city. And this location is not located near residential. So we don't think that there will be a noise issue there that would bother anyone. So that's kind of where we're at now.
The number of people, assuming it will be open in the evening,
Yes, sir.
you said, what, 36 people?
No,
Oh,
sir,
that's
that was the last case.
Oh, I'm
It's a
sorry.
large
Yeah.
location.
Hopefully we'll have more than 36 people. Mr. Lane.
If so, it's 24 parking spots are going to be perfect.
Yes.
Roughly, what would you expect the number of people to be there after midnight?
Oh, goodness. Crystal balling it.
I think that's important that we know. Could you have 100 people in there?
After midnight. I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, they've got roughly a little over 6,000 square feet, so you're probably talking at 300.
Well, and that's within
That's up to
buildings
100
plus,
bucks.
Yeah, I mean,
plus
the-
outdoor spaces as well.
That's indoors. That's indoor.
That's just, yeah, it's like 9,000 indoor when you add the 3 buildings plus all the outdoor space, but.
Yeah, Commissioner Lane, there's certainly room for well over 100 people on site.
As it's possible.
You know, who knows how many will choose to attend after midnight? We just don't know.
And if they even, their tenants choose to stay open to then, I would say that this site's probably about half the size of Grove Roots, which is located to the east over a block.
Yeah.
And I know on any given night on the weekend, especially when special events, there are well over 100 people there and the impact to the area is not great.
And just to clarify, the people that we have spoken to about leasing space to at this location don't plan to be open past midnight. So that's what we know so far.
Okay, thank you for the.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Sorry, I can't answer that anymore clearly at this point in time. Anybody else? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else from the public? We'll close the public portion of the hearing and reopen the planning portion of the hearing and entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve case number P 23-06 S, request by 610 LLC for special use approval for a large scale drinking establishment, package sales and small scale artisan production in the commercial downtown C1 zoning district, general location 302 4th Street Southwest. The area covered by this request is 0.87 plus or minus acres as proposed in the fact sheet.
Motion's approved. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. It carries. Next case is case number P 23-21, request by 610 LLC to rezone a parcel from commercial highway C3 zoning district to commercial downtown C1 zoning district. General location 199 6th Street Northwest. The area covered by this request is 0.5 plus or minus acres.
All right. This is the future land use map for this location. The subject property there is outlined and hashed, and it is located in our primary activity center area of the city. As you look at the zoning map, as you can see, it's currently designated as C3. Across 6th Street to the east is all the frontage in that area is C1 commercial downtown, which is what's being requested. And as you look to the west, there are some parcels along the western frontage of 6th Street Northwest, which is also Highway 17, which have been rezoned to C1. Additionally, to the west is mixed use zoning district. As you look here at the aerial map, as you can see, it's a former office space and car wash site. It's an older aerial. I think there were car sales maybe going on at that time. At this time, it's currently since vacant and the parking lot is empty. To the west is some residential uses. To the north, across Avenue B Northwest is a multi-unit office building there in that triangular piece. And to the south are medical offices that the buildings are set very much to what would be C1 standards. As you look at the subject property, again, there's the vacant office along with the automatic car wash. And then looking kind of, so you can see the rear of the property, that's the rest of the expanse as you look kind of to the south. As you look to the north, you have Pope Avenue, and then in the distance, you see the Haven condos. And as you look to the south, again, there's a medical foot doctor store located there. A little bit of background. Again, this is the request to rezone a parcel from C3 to C1. The property is located at 199 6th Street Northwest and includes a car wash drive-through building constructed in 1970 and an office building constructed in 1997. Petitioner intends to redevelop this property with uses and development standards consistent with C1. However, no specific uses or plans have been determined at this time. The extension of C1 zoning district across to the west frontage of 6th Street Northwest, which is Highway 17, is consistent with other parcels with similar frontage located to the south and with the city's envisioned goals for this corridor. Upon review of this request, the following conclusions have been reached. This request represents a natural expansion of the downtown core to mirror the already established boundary along the side of Sixth Street Northwest. It supports land use concepts outlined in the FDOT's US 17 corridor study. The rezoning of the subject property will allow the proposed redevelopment to be consistent with development to the east as it relates to development standards and uses. And the maximum development potential is unchanged. Therefore, there is no increase in potential infrastructure demands beyond what's currently allowed. Staff does recommend the planning commission recommend approval of this request and it's forwarding to the city commission for final action. I stand for any questions.
I have one, I think this is what I kind of recollect. I know C1, because of its location, I don't think it necessarily has to have the parking levels, but C3 would, right? Because it's kind of obviously this is going to be a less dense location, but it's, the whole idea is to make it like a business that could walk to potentially, or.
Yeah, so C1 is exempt from providing on-site parking. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't provide on-site parking. It would just have to meet the standards as required. The other intent with C1 is to have those buildings pushed to that front building line, which is very much what's envisioned in that FDOT US 17 for that pedestrian type, not having the large parking lots in the front and the building set to the back. These are some of the visions that are envisioned to put the C1 on that western side and then to work to have, more pedestrian improvements from the east side of downtown over to the west side as you head out to Lake Howard and the nature trail and all of that. So it's envisioned in the area.
Yeah, and I would just add that, so why is that significant? Well, when we did the corridor study, in order to get FDOT funds to implement a corridor study, they often look for local support on the land use side. They are committed to do their part on the transportation side to make something more walkable, more safe for pedestrians, but they want to see a commitment by the local government to do the land use portion of it as well as a partner. And so that's why it's important.
Any other questions from commissioners? We'll close the planning commission portion of the hearing and open the public portion. Anybody wishing to speak for or against? All right, seeing as there are none, we will close the public portion of the hearing and reopen the planning commission hearing and we'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve case number P 23-21. Request 610 LLC to rezone a parcel for commercial highway C3 zoning district to commercial downtown C1 zoning district. Current location 199 6th Street Northwest, area covered by this request is 0.5 acres.
I would second. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. Who carries? Next case, case number P 23-22 and P 23-23, request by Doug. Sorry, I'm gonna butcher this. How? But to amend the 2025 future land use map on a parcel from traditional neighborhood area future land use to commercial future land use and to rezone the same parcel from single family residential large lot R1 zoning district to commercial neighborhood C2 zoning district. General location 1120 Cypress Gardens Boulevard. The area covered by these requests is 4.86 plus or minus acres.
This is the future land use map. As you can see, the subject property there is outlined in black. It currently is designated traditional neighborhood area, as well as the parcels to the west. As you go to the north to the Interlochen subdivision, it does have residential low density. And then across Cypress Gardens Boulevard to the south is primary activity center. As you look at the zoning map, the subject property as well as the surrounding properties to the north immediate west are R1, but as you look to the south, there is C2, which is the requested, as well as C3, which is our commercial highway designations. This is the aerial map. It's a fully developed site for the Palm Garden Winter Haven Rehab Facility. As you can see, and it's surrounded by single family to the north and west and Cypress Gardens Boulevard to south. This is looking at a view of the subject property as you look towards the north. And to the south across, as you can see, it's commercial plaza is located over there with a mixture of retail and other uses. As you look to the east, it's Cypress Gardens Boulevard. There's a DOT pond there located about over here. And the entrance to Interlochen. And as you look to the west, there's a retention area adjacent to our roadway. And then as you look to the north is the Interlochen neighborhood, which is screened properly from this development. Again, this is a request to amend the traditional neighborhood area to commercial future land use and rezone from R1 to C2 zoning district. The property is located at 1120 Cypress Gardens Boulevard and consists of the 59,000 square foot Palm Garden of Winter Haven Health and Rehabilitation Center that was built in 1987. The current use of the property as a health and rehabilitation center is considered legal nonconforming in the R1 zoning district. Therefore, the property is subject to Chapter 21, Division 9 nonconformities. In order to render the use of the property legal conforming and provide the ability to reestablish the use should it be destroyed, the petitioner is requesting these changes. Upon review of these requests, the following conclusions have been reached. These requests represent a change to a more appropriate future land use and zoning designations for the subject property based on current uses, location, and surrounding designations and uses. And as the property is already developed, minimal impacts on supporting infrastructure above what is currently exists are expected. Therefore, staff does recommend the planning commission recommend approval of these requests and their forwarding to the city commission for final action. And I stand for any questions.
I think I think I understand what this is. Was this, I'll call it an unfortunate casualty of the future land use unified land development code we did in 2001, something like that?
No, so I tried to do some research back, and since this is from 1987, some of the records are a little where I couldn't figure it fully, but my best case on this was it was annexed in 87 or 86 along with the property that became the Interlochen subdivision. From some very dated aerials, it shows dirt already churning on this site. So we assume that it was permitted by Polk County and was annexed while it was already under development. So, and then the land use and zoning was put on the same as what was put onto what became the Interlochen subdivision. So,
It was just kind of brought in as a group, and we accidentally gave the same one.
Well, yeah.
Obviously, it doesn't.
Well, and there was a time, and I don't think it dated around to there was a time with some special use that you could, in some of our single family residential, have a use like this, because in some ways an ALF is considered residential. And so there's just a little bit of that overlap. So this is to just correct something that has been sitting like this. It wasn't R1, but it was like R1C, like one of the older, but then it converted to R1 in 2000 when everything was updated. And it's been like this. So it came before us, the applicant had asked for a zoning verification letter, and that's when they didn't realize. And so we're like, well, we can help you take care of this. So we're just doing what's appropriate for the site.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll go ahead and close the planning portion of the hearing and open the public portion. If anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against, please feel free.
And nobody says Hood, right? So it's spelling. So I am Doug Hood, and I'm the Director of Property Management for Palm Garden Healthcare. I've been here for a little year and a half, and I really just want to put a face and thank you for the consideration. If there's anything I can help answer, I'm happy to do that. I don't have a lot of history, but I'll do the best I can. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close the public portion, reopen the planning portion of the hearing. We'll entertain a motion. Are there any questions?
I should say for the record, should we indicate its address is the same as the subject property?
Sure.
It's a requirement.
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion in favor of case numbers P-23-22 and P-2323 request by Doug Hood to amend the 2025 future land use map on a parcel from traditional neighborhood area future land use to a commercial future land use, and the request by Doug Hood from single family residential large lot R1 zoning district to a commercial neighborhood C2 zoning district. The general location being 1120 Cypress Gardens Boulevard. Area covered by the request is 4.86 more or less acres as presented by staff in the fact sheet.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, carries. Next case, case number P 23 24 and P 23 25. Administrative request to update the 2025 Winter Haven Comprehensive Plan by revising goals, objectives, and policies, and to extend the planning horizon to 2035, 2035 Winter Haven Comprehensive Plan, and to amend and update the 2025 future land use map to create the 2035 future land use map.
Okay.
Anybody want to stretch before this
This won't be too bad, but I will say this is probably one of the more significant things that will ever come before this board. The comp plan is held in high regard, you know, both locally and throughout the state. Comprehensive plan. So this is, you know, a once a decade exercise that we go through. And I know staff, we've been working on this roughly for about 2 years. Granted, we've had some fits and starts along the way with it due to other business coming up, but we are at a point where we do need to move forward with this. So this is going to kind of be a tag team presentation tonight. So I'm going to start off with a little history and background. And then Heather's going to go through some of the more specific changes that we've made in the document. So a little background, the comp plan, basically the whole comprehensive planning process got started in 1985. Florida legislature passed legislation requiring all local governments to create a comprehensive plan. It's now affectionately known as Chapter 163 of Florida statutes. And you know, it's been amended by the legislature many times over the years. It's not quite the same process today as it was back then, but it's still a very important process. As a result of these legislative changes back in the 80s, the city adopted its first ever comprehensive plan in 1991. It did have 8 elements. Those were the future land use element, housing, infrastructure, traffic circulation, conservation, recreation, open space, intergovernmental coordination, and capital improvements. As part of the comprehensive planning process, the state requires local governments to periodically evaluate their comprehensive plan. It's usually every 7 to 10 years based on a schedule sent down from the state as to when local governments are to perform this evaluation. But city's first evaluation was in 1998. And following this evaluation, the city basically adopted several what we call year-based amendments to the comprehensive plan. Those were adopted in May 2000. And that's where we adopted a new future land use map in 2000 and several, you know, amendments throughout the document, future land use, all the elements. In the following years, the city went ahead and started adding in what were called more affectionately as optional. Some were optional, 2 of these were optional, and 1 was a mandatory element. But the transportation element was added to the comprehensive plan in 2002. A neighborhoods element was added 2004. And what's really a very unique element, the public school facility element, was added in 2008. And that's an element that we share with the other 14 municipalities in Polk County. We all have the exact same basic element that we're required to have by agreement. So following, you know, implementation of those new elements, the city's next year was required in 2009. It was adopted. And as a result, we adopted, basically it was a pretty significant overhaul of the comprehensive plan that in 2011, that's the current one we have today, the 2025 comprehensive plan. So moving forward to where we are today, statutes require that the planning horizon be at least 10 years. As you know, we're in 2023, so we've only got 2 years left on the 2025 plan. So therefore we have to amend it and extend it out to what we're proposing as the 2035. with this in mind, the the city's ongoing One Water initiative is currently underway. And given that it could have some pretty significant, impact on the direction the city takes, we felt it's best to provide a minimal update of the comprehensive plan at this time. So there is some minor update to the elements. Certainly a new future land use map is needed to go out to 2035. And while not brought up before this body as much, but equally important, there's a whole transportation map series that is part of the comprehensive plan. Those also need to be extended out to 2035. So those are the main tasks before us this evening. And at this point, I will pass the baton. And first of all, we'll talk about population. As you know, a couple of years ago, we did some population projections. We actually had the Planning Commission approve population projections. And that's what you see on the screen right now. Basically, we have used basically a low, medium, and high range of projections. If you look at these numbers, they were based on 2020 US Census, which had the city at 49,219. I will say the city has had exceptional growth over the last 3 years. Right now, we're actually trending on the high side of the high projections. The city current population is roughly a little over 53,000 as of last April of 2022. I would suspect it as of this last April, which we'll receive the estimate in August, we're probably in the neighborhood of 55, 56,000 based on the growth pattern and trends. So our projections are running a little low. We did debate whether we should run them again, but we felt that we're just going to leave them in place right now. We can always come back and run new projections if we continue to be running exceedingly out of range. But after just 3 years, we're slightly out of range. I would say we're about a year behind where the projections show we should be, or we're a year ahead, excuse me. So, and now I'll pass it along to Heather to go through the elements
All right.
themselves.
So in your agenda packet, which is probably the biggest item you've ever had in there, there was a link for each of the draft elements and a little bit of summary in the fact sheet. And I'm just going to go through each of those just to notate on the record, and then if you have any questions about any of the elements. Like Sean said, there is very minimal changes. So in recreation and open space element, for minor changes, it was related mostly to dates and clarification of language. Same with the conservation element changes, still just minor changes. There are a lot of dates within the comprehensive plan with goals of when to do certain things by, and then obviously as different agencies change, language needs to be updated. So that's a lot of what those minor changes related dates and clarification language. In our housing element, there were mostly minor changes related dates and clarification, but we did have 2 significant changes, I would say. We're providing a timeline when to evaluate the city's single family zoning districts for opportunities to allow for missing middle attached housing within there. And we're also adding a policy to review the city's commercial zoning district to permit residential uses, which is something that we're kind of being a little bit pushed by the state with, but that is something that we need to look at as well and to work towards that policy. So that's the significant changes from the housing element. As you look at neighborhood preservation and revitalization, again, it's just minor changes related to dates and language. The infrastructure element changes, which this element contains the water supply, some sub-elements, water supply, potable water, sanitary sewer, solid waste, and drainage and aquifer recharge. The significant changes include, we did change relating to revising the potable water consumption level of service standards to reflect observed reductions in water consumption. There were changes relating to revising wastewater treatment level of service standards to reflect observed reductions in water consumption. A policy for budgeting of residential solid waste collection vehicles in relation to single family home growth was added. A timeline to work to adopt graded green concepts into the city's land development regulations was added, and minor changes to reuse goals and timelines. If you look at the intergovernmental coordination element, it was just minor changes related to dates and language. The future land use element, I would say, has the most significant changes. So this element was significantly revised in 2011 to address findings from the 2009 year. While the goals, objectives, and policies have generally worked well over the last 12 years, due to the population growth and evolving growth trends, this element received the most revisions for 2035. So some significant changes include we are renaming of the future land use designations. These are to better reflect their purpose and intent. It's one, just a better understanding what they are, and also as we receive out mailers and stuff, when we are doing these changes, people are very confused when we call something the activity center. They think we're building like a gym. So this is some of that is to provide a better way to reflect what the purpose and intent is, and hope to not cause as much confusion among the public. There are density increases in all of the designations which allow residential uses. I would say that's one of the more significant changes within there. And we tried to simplify some of the numbers, especially with in our now primary mixed use hub. To the table was very much, 5 different ranges depending on acreage, and we tried to simplify some of those to just 2, or to just provide, better development across. We're providing provisions for density transfers from areas mapped as conservation within a development to upland areas within a development. And there are also updates to reference dates and clarification language throughout the element. Transportation element changes. The majority of the transportation element dates to 2002, with some minor updates being made in 2011. As this element is expected to require a major update in the next few years, proposed changes at this time just relate to updating the map series and some dates. Capital improvements element, the element has been updated to reflect revised level of service standards, inclusion of criteria for adding projects to the 5-year schedule of capital improvements, and the inclusion of funding concepts for capital projects. There were no changes made to the public school facilities element. As Sean said, that is cooperation among all the municipalities, Polk County and Polk County School Board. So it'd have to be a countywide discussion to revise this element. So we're not making any changes to that. So with that, staff does recommend the Planning Commission recommend approval of these requests and reporting the City Commission for final action. And I know it's a lot. Hopefully you're able to review it. And if you have any questions, Sean and I will be happy to answer.
Questions?
I warned you if you wanted to stretch.
I talk fast.
I'll make a motion in favor of case number.
You gotta open the public
Oh,
hearing.
I'm sorry.
I know no one's
I
here,
know.
but you still gotta do.
We'll close the public,
And-
the
and
planning portion of the meeting. and
Before we
public
do that,
portion.
can I request, let's vote on these separately, the 24, and then do a separate one for 25.
Okay.
Because they're related, but they're really should be 2 separate items.
Okay, so perfect. The public portion is now open. Anybody wishing to speak for or against? All right, we'll close the public portion and reopen the planning portion of the hearing. And I will make a motion in favor of case numbers P-23-24 and P-23-25.
So Sean asked for them to be separate.
Separate.
So can you just do a motion
Oh, you
for the
want-
first case? Yeah.
Okay, you want me to read the whole thing for each one?
Just read the first one, take a second and a vote, and then a motion for the second case. Does that make sense? Don't combine them. You're just gonna make a motion for
I-
23, 24.
And I apologize, we should have split this out on the
Yeah,
agenda,
I'll
probably.
make a motion in favor of case number P-23-24. Administrative request to update the 2025 Winter Haven Comprehensive Plan by revising goals, objectives, and policies, and to extend the planning horizon to 2035. That's the first.
That's first.
Okay. All right, so we have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, that passes. I will make a motion to approve case number P-23-25 to amend and update the 2025 future land use map to create the 2035 future land use map. Second, okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right,
All right.
passes. Other business?
Yep, so we have the Planning Commission bylaws amendment on there. So at the March 7th, 2023 Planning Commission regular meeting, staff was directed to prepare proposed bylaws amendments. The current bylaws were adopted by the Planning Commission back in 2013, so they are 10 years old. So in summary, some of the proposed changes were as follow: removing term limits for the chair, clarifying the meeting moves to the first Thursday when it is a city holiday. It currently just says holiday. Adding an additional attendance requirement of missing 6 meetings in a 12-month period also may result in vacating of the seat. Currently, right now, it's just 3 in a row, but we wanted to justify that across other, attendance requirements. Removing the procedure of speakers signing in during the meeting. We did away with that with COVID, so we might as well take that out of bylaws. Adding reference to the de novo process in the appeals section because that's been added to the code since. And stating the agenda packet is electronically delivered, not mailed. It currently says it's still mailed, so I guess we should have been bringing that by USPS. So as far as how amendment works, bylaws may be amended by a vote of 2/3 of the regular members of the planning commission, which would be 6. Thankfully, we have 6 tonight. Amendments that amount to some substantive change shall require at least 30 days notice to all members before such an amendment is brought before the commission for a vote. This requirement was met with the notification, including the proposed amendment sent to all the planning commissioners via email on March 31st. So staff recommends the planning commission approve the request, and that's it. Stand for any questions.
I will make a motion to approve staff's request to the planning commission bylaws as presented.
I would second it.
Second, okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. Passes.
We almost put in there that you had to hold the pinwheel in order to have permission to speak.
And when it stops spinning, you're.
How do I mute him? What number is?
Sean, do you want to provide the update on past items?
Yeah, I'll go over the past items. Well, I still have a little bit of voice left. The Old Bartow Lake Wales Road, the future land use and zoning request we heard at the April meeting. That was successfully transmitted to the Department of Economic Opportunity by the City Commission. That was on April 24th. Probably we'll see that back for final adoption probably in July would be my guess. The rezoning we had for the small property out on Record Highway, that is scheduled to go before the City Commission during this month of May. Likewise, the update to the floodplain regulations is also moving forward this month as well. So, and that's all of our April items.
Thank you. Any comments from the planning commissioners?
As your liaison to the MTAC board, I feel I need to report. There's quite a few projects going on presently. The future ones are kind of out there. It depends on funding. But we've got Avenue C Southwest is under construction. There's a complete streets which we'll redo and reconnect a lot of the I believe that there was kind of mentioned earlier, we're putting some parking and then connection really. So you can have sidewalks and connect up to some of the trails that are extending down in that area. Avenue K, that one will be kind of neat. That's kind of the fix to the west of the college. There's that, Magnolia, I believe, or something like that, or Miriam.
Like Martha?
Like
Martha. We can all agree. Martha. Yeah, there's going to be a roundabout there to solve a lot of the issues of approach and geometry that have always existed there. And that should also add to the connectivity from First Street to the college, which is really ideal because then the college kind of wants to donate. We'll see how that all moves and get some connectivity from there to Lake Elbert, which is also moving forward. They have all of the actual design complete and it's bidding. But it's not only that, I think they're redoing all the water sewer, a bunch of stormwater. So we should note some improvements on the water quality of Lake Elbert, not just so it's not just you can get from here to there. It's a real meaningful investment that should improve property values. It should improve the quality of the lake, have less growth around the edges, and I don't know, there may be some, I don't remember if there's lighting. I think they were looking at some lighting, but I know it should be a
And
really,
pedestrian improvements too, as well as
Yeah.
crosswalks that from the residential and the other part of the lake too, so.
right, yeah, from the east, right? Yeah, and which should, and I think they're going to add a stop sign or something in there
There's
to
gonna-
slow down
yeah,
the traffic.
11th Street and Lake Albert will be a three-way stop, so was a long identified area of concern.
So that was one, I don't know. That was one of the first projects we were adding to the list, I want to say 10 years ago, something like that. So it takes a long time to buy all the properties, which is, if you like property, you don't want to give it away. I understand that, unless there's some benefit. And I think this has a real benefit to not just them, but everyone. The South Lake Howard pedestrian enhancements and South Lake Howard pedestrian project feasibility are really neat. They're ones in the design phase, I want to see if that really happens. I'm really excited about that. The South Lake Howard, it could be a really great park down in the area, which would be really neat, kind of on the level of, I don't know, a comparable one, much smaller, but like Carter Road, some of those kind of neat, you don't see every day type of enhancements. And then Magnolia Southwest, short-term and long-term, there was, that's why I got it confused. That one I'm trying to remember what it was. There was the,
Magnolia South, is that the roundabout?
I
Yeah,
thought,
Magnolia and Third.
that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking, and that's why I was like, there's two roundabouts that we're
Yeah.
looking at. I was like, I can't remember which one's which. And then finally, they've awarded the sidewalk cafes, which is an enhancement to that downtown. I'm sure you know that, but not everyone did, so that they can actually again, kind of give a better sense of place for where people are walking. Hopefully people slow down a little bit when they don't have such wide areas to just fly through. There's going to be some parking in front or pickup areas, especially like for the theater, but where it makes more sense for the restaurants to be able to have outdoor seating, they're going to do that. And that's especially near Fourth and then kind of away from Fourth and so I think all of them will have a huge
I think
benefit to the city.
bigger draw for downtown businesses. I mean, even when downtown's busy and you drive down Central, you can't see any activity.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
people will be getting more people.
So this was one of the bigger updates that we've had because we don't have them that frequently. So that's why I'm just passing along the information. Not that Sean's not at every one of those,
You're doing your liaison.
but I have to liaise, right?
That's right.
Anything else from commissioners?
Yes.
Sir?
I have a problem with our increasing numbers of large scale drinking establishments. Our police are not able to handle these situations when they occur after midnight because they don't have the staff to handle it. The problems occur when these places close down. A while back, we approved another drinking establishment in the plaza on Highway 17. And there's been recurring issues with this.
Is that Spring Hill?
Spring
Spring, oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's Spring Lake.
Spring Hill's a
Whatever.
city.
Yeah, you're right.
I think
It's West Hills.
What is occurring is
You know what I'm talking
the large scale places, maybe even the littler places downtown. When the people leave there, they know they better not do too much downtown because the police are closer to the downtown. So it appears to us that, they're leaving there and they're getting on Highway 17 in the downtown area, and they're racing up to that, plaza that we have. I'm talking dozens of cars. And I know you want to speak.
That's okay. I'm letting you finish.
Because I know you're gonna come after.
No, it's all right. I won't come after you.
They go into that plaza, they get into that parking lot. I don't know what gets into them. Or why they would go in there. But Easter Sunday morning, 1:30 a.m., which is normally a rather peaceful day and peaceful time in most people's lives. We had a major confrontation in Northwest Winter Haven, and people from all over Northwest Winter Haven made calls and complaints. I don't know whether anybody here has heard this or not. They had to bring in the sheriff's department. It took them nearly a half an hour to get it under control. This is not the first time in the city of Winter Haven when we've had these problems. They go way back where we have had shooting matches. Our police against these renegade people. And I really think we should look at it. I don't know how many of you get the Orlando Sentinel, but on Friday, the 28th, the headline article in there is that the city of Orlando has adopted after midnight permit, which cuts back the length of time these establishments can be open. And because they have had to hire so many additional police to handle these people, they've arranged where the drinking establishments in downtown Orlando are having to pay big money to cover the cost of the police. And I think that the planning department, when it's looking at large scale drinking places, needs to be very, very careful because our record is lousy.
So,
David, if I can, just as somebody.
I'm not referring to you.
No, I know, just, I feel like I can offer some insight as somebody who owned a large scale drinking establishment.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I think the city does a really good job with, our special use approval process. So there isn't just a zone, you can't just open a bar and do whatever you want. And as far as the police are concerned, all these special use approvals that come to us for large scale drinking establishments are required to get have a safety plan that's approved by the chief of police.
But it hasn't worked.
No, it's not that it hasn't worked.
I'll clarify. We wrote that in there a number of years ago, and we amended our alcohol ordinance requiring special use approval and the approval of a security plan by the chief of police. We also wrote into the ordinance conditions under which you could have your special use revoked. To my knowledge, we've had little to no incidents at all with the establishments that we have since approved through that process. The incident that you're referring to up on 17 in the Spring Lake Shopping Plaza is related to a business that opened illegally. And we are pursuing actions, both through the police department, through our attorney's office, and other means, to rectify that situation. That is a business that opened and began operating without special use approval through this body. So, and that's almost all of the incidents that we see in the city are related to situations such as that. I'm not aware, I don't know if staff is aware of any incidents that have happened at any locations
I'm not.
that have opened since we amended our alcohol ordinance.
Yeah, no, all the ones that went through it, and our chief of police is very good about requiring, depending on the location or the business activity of sending them back and making them redraft their security plan to put conditions in there. And normally the major ones, we also put as a condition on potential use. And we've never brought one back for revocation. I'd like to add too, you talked about, we did have one that we approved in Spring Lake Square, which is the Legacy Nightclub. Police is having no issues with their establishment. They're operating the way they're supposed to. So that shows right there, when someone that's going to follow the rules and go through the right process normally doesn't have an issue. However, when they go through that process, we have all these catches to be able to assist. It's the problem with those who decide to operate without going through the process. They are a code violation, they're a public nuisance, and we have to go through them in the processes that we're legally allowed to in the timelines that we have to, which I know unfortunately is not timely for those who live in the area.
And most of the time, most of the people that open those establishments, open them without going through this process for that reason. Because
Why
like,
do we allow them?
we don't allow them.
We
They do it illegally, and then they get fined, we have avenues that we can help shut these places down.
That particular business is on the no sale list with the state of Florida. They're not allowed to purchase alcohol. So they do it illegally. They get it through other means.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was here when there was kind of it wasn't an overreaction. It was definitely a reaction to something that had happened that was incredibly bad. And where the single business was really causing an incredible amount of problems with gang-related activity. To where it was shut down, and that was when they initially required a plan for every single one that came in. And I'll call it the classic overreaction, and they made everyone basically be on this, including I think your group. You had to reapply a year later and show that nothing happened. And eventually, that may have been before.
It was, we were grandfathered in. Yeah, we were.
So it was, everyone was having to reapply, and eventually it was getting so costly. Then luckily, I guess by the time you guys came in, they had done away with that. But now it's instead of having to reapply and show, look, we didn't have any, they just assess it. So and that's when they come back. So what you're bringing up is a group that doesn't exist, meaning I agree that pain exists, but I could I'll be doing that same thing at my house illegally.
It's legal.
Yeah, it's an illegal business that is operating because they want to. They'll get the legal authority of the city and probably the state thrown at them if they're selling. I mean, the state's going to be pretty serious about their cop type. They want their money. I mean, quite frankly, you got to pay your various taxes and fees, and I mean, they will get a hefty fine and likely be jailed for some of this. However, I'm not seeing the issues that you're saying, other than
Will you come to
illegal
our
activities.
house on Saturday nights?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
This has gone on for months.
Yeah, I certainly understand what you're saying, and that is reality.
And
But
I believe we
Yeah.
have some of the citizens from that area that live close to that area. Right behind there are $300,000 houses.
Again, it's not
Yeah.
a use that's come before us, but the one that did and those homeowners were in opposition of has not violated anything and is operating as they said they would and were conditioned to do so. So
That's a new one.
again, we we haven't had any say over any conditions or how this one's operating. We're going after them in the mechanisms that we can, and hopefully it will end soon, but we, again, have to go through.
It's a legal
right-
process.
And we
Yeah.
we do, as a board or as commissioners, have the ability to vote nay. And vote against, so.
And I do share your concern. We all do.
Yeah.
We all do. We don't want that type of activity going on in our city.
Yeah, and,
But I think that our,
I
just don't want a comparison of-
From Northwest Winter Haven in this room. And in the room of the city commission as well.
yeah, no,
There were dozens of people who made complaints. They're not all from the building where I live.
no, I understand. And again, but I
And there were
believe
some
that our
significant people who complained.
our process as written in the code that we currently have is working with those establishments that go through the process, because we have the means to revoke licenses for bad behavior. We have,
Have we revoked
security
the
plans.
license?
No, we haven't had to.
They don't have a.
They don't have one.
They don't have operating illegal.
Never been.
right,
So
so,
can't you go in there and shut the door?
There's a
No.
process. We're doing the legal process.
To go through, so
Yeah.
it's being taken care of, but it's a
It just
legal
takes time.
process.
But they rent from that plaza.
But you have legal bounds. that
There's
you
due
got to
process
in.
that's got to be followed.
Yeah, due process.
That's the thing, and we have to make sure we follow the statute and the provisions that we have, because we could, if we don't do it the right way, then they may get us on a technicality.
Right,
So
and-
I've explained this to many of your residents in your building. I've had lengthy conversations similar to the one I'm having with you right now.
Being taken care of.
Yeah,
It's
but
a process.
unfortunately, you gotta go in the time.
yeah, and I mean, we can't prevent the, I'll call it idealistic type, developments that are being proposed, which is, I mean, I see this similar to like the joinery or the haul on, or, what's that, the haul on yard up in, or, I think the TAW's redevelopment was, because I remember when they built Ulaley, and I was looking at the TAW building, I wish they do something with that. And they did. Somebody had a, $20 million that they just really needed to put a start.
Dennis brought-
And then another 80 million to finish it, right?
So.
We have
Yeah.
said enough. Okay.
It's but I think that's a really, this is one of the, it has the opportunity of being one of the really great draws to Winter Haven for people that, not only niche businesses, but people that, go there, something that they wouldn't normally see.
Okay.
Hey, did I see City Expos this week?
Yeah.
It is.
I almost got it. I almost got it. Any other questions, concerns?
Copy of this thing, from Orlando. Of course, Orlando isn't significant because they're not growing at the rate that we're.
All right.
How much?
We're adjourned.
Yeah,
Right?
much faster.
You're growing fast. In percentage, their numbers.